Okay, so just bear with me for a second. Imagine yourself on a journey that you're going to go on. It's an unknown journey. You're not sure of the outcomes, and so as such, you're very likely to feel a little bit nervous about that. You're thinking to yourself, oh, what if I do something? What if I go to the wrong place? What am I going to get? Waste my time or my money or whatever it might be. But whatever, you would not be human if you didn't have some level of kind of anxiety associated with that, because you want to avoid at all costs a negative experience, don't you? Natural, perfectly natural. And when you're learning to drive, what generally speaking you don't spend a lot of time considering and talking about is the actual process to learning to drive. We kind of like to get stuck in, don't we? We start and then we just find our way about as we're going along. Whereas knowing what's coming your way and preparing adequately for it is a really key step to take right at the beginning to improve your chances of success. And so I would say to you, let's just, for a couple of minutes, I'll give you 3 tips in this driving video here for you to consider, to take on board, which will have a positive effect on your learning to drive experience. So these are 3 things that are key to your preparation, because what you need to appreciate right early on is that you can't treat this like an academic qualification whereby you just study. I know this happens on the theory test, because there's nothing to catch you out on the theory test if you study adequately for it, much like an academic qualification. You've got to apply the principles of the theory study into your driving, but for the test itself it's fairly similar, isn't it? But the driving test has got nothing like that at all. It's a fluid, it's a moving situation. It has got unknowns in that it's only 38 to 40 minutes, but there are unknowns going on there that aren't controlled, and in that regard, boy, it is so different to an academic qualification or an academic examination. And so you can't make that analogy. Key, this is absolutely key. Easy trap to fall into, don't get me wrong, but because you're trying to link it to something that you've done in the past. But learning to drive and taking the driving test is a fluid, in some regards uncontrolled process, and so you can't make that same analogy as examinations. So 3 things, let's have a look. How do we prepare ourselves? One is you develop the key driving skills that are required, and I'm thinking here in terms of the coordination of the actions of your hands, your feet and your eyes for the observations, not just in terms of getting used to doing those effectively and being a safe driver, but the timing of those as well is a key thing. So that's one of them, developing the key driving skills that you're going to be needing. The second thing is to practice. The more time you can spend behind the steering wheel practicing, the better. Absolute key thing. The Driving Standards Agency have said in their research that the people that are able to do the more hours with friends and family, or whichever way you look at it, even with a driving instructor, the more hours, the more chance you have of passing your driving test first time. Statistically, it is a fact. So get used to driving in the daylight hours and the dark, and in areas that you're not familiar with, and in driving conditions which are varied, and just hours behind the steering wheel driving in a good quality way, so that you are still developing those key driving skills, is key, really, really biggie. And the last one is to be open and prepared to refine those skills as you're going along. And I'm actually talking even after you've passed your driving test here, because we all do need to do that. You're going to still be picking up with the experience that you have, developing your skills as it is, but try to avoid this thing of getting, as you're going through your driving lessons, thinking to yourself, oh, I think I'm there. I mean, I've done a video on this, I'll put the link on here, but I think I'm there now, I'm speaking to my mates, I reckon I'm there, so therefore I'm not going to learn anymore. Try to avoid that, because you'll still be learning even when you've passed your driving test. So the things that we need to avoid like the plague is not knowing what's in the driving test, That's not a place you want to be. You don't want something happening in the driving test that you weren't prepared for. You think, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. Or not knowing what the standard of driving is required for the driving test. Again, you know, that's absolutely key. You need to understand, take responsibility and understand what is the standard of driving that is required and get tuned into that. Other things we want to avoid like the plague is not having enough time to practice these key skills. Sounds so obvious that, but you'd be surprised if the goal that you're aiming to achieve is unrealistic because you just aren't able to fit in those hours. You're kind of like swimming against the tide already. You're setting yourself up for not a successful outcome, and you want to avoid that like the plague. You want to be giving yourself the time in order for you to do this properly, effectively, this process. And the last one on this, you know, you want to be feeling really, really confident, 100% confident. And you know, I would say avoid like the plague. If you've got a driving test coming up in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks time, and you aren't feeling good, then that's not great. Really, really not great. Test day is big enough, isn't it? You know, and you wouldn't be human if you didn't have nerves on test day. So, and if you're already not feeling great about your driving anyway, then you add in the test day nerves as well. Wow, that's just not good. So what we've got to do, what have we got to do? What have you got to do? How are you going to prepare yourself properly for this? Well, I'd say there's a couple of things immediately that I would say to you, just do these anyway. And one of them is doing good mock tests. Good meaning realistic. And this is where a good driving instructor really does shine, because if you can do mock tests that are very in line with what's happening on the driving test, then if you think about what I've just said about knowing what's in the driving test and the standard, then you're already getting to know that, aren't you? So I would say that's an absolute key thing to do, and not just to do them, but to be doing them and passing those mock tests with clean sheets. If you're doing mock tests and you aren't passing them, then that's a big kind of sign for you, really, in terms of how prepared you are for taking the driving test. Another thing to do is watch these videos. Listen, if these videos are good enough for the North Wales Fire and Emergency Rescue drivers on their training that they do, if it's good enough for these professional people that are advanced drivers, then why would you not be looking at these driving videos? That's the question you've got. It's a free resource. It just requires your time to be looking into them. I mean, it's kind of just get on it, to get on these videos, because they're key. They're absolutely key. Professionals are referring to them. Why would you not be doing it when you're learning to drive? So you do not want the pain and the pressure, let's not forget the pressure, that is associated when you start on a slippery slide of failing driving tests. You know, it's not what you want. So if you're watching this and you haven't had a driving test yet, then mark those words, because if you have had maybe 2, 3, 4 driving tests and failed them, you'll know where I'm coming from. It's on your shoulders. It's not a great place to be. It's recoverable, don't get me wrong. We can still use that experience you can use that experience to your benefit, but it's not really what you want. You wouldn't choose to have that, would you? Apart from the finance that's involved, it's not. You don't want to get into the habit of failing driving tests. So appropriately preparing for the process of learning to drive is, I'd say to you, really, really an important aspect, which not many people are doing ordinarily at the start. But have a look at this video, think to yourself what bits of that is really, really key, because some of it tends to chime with people more than others. And what I'd encourage you to do is stick on a comment down below on what's your greatest fear in this process. What's the crucial thing? How do you intend to properly prepare to overcome that greatest fear? Go through that thought process. It might only take you 2-3 minutes, but bung it down below, and I think you'll find that will be a useful thing to do. Okay, Any other questions at all, just ping them down below.